A large new study links hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine to a higher risk of death in coronavirus patients. Researchers looked at seriously ill infected patients in more than 600 hospitals worldwide, and those treated with either medication were more likely to die or develop a heart condition. Now, keep in mind, this is the drug that the president has called a game changer.
If things don't go as planned, it's not going to kill anybody. It will be wonderful. It'll be so beautiful. It'll be a gift from heaven if it works. If some other person put it forward, they'd say, oh, let's go with it. You know, what do you have to lose? Try it, if you'd like. I've seen things that I sort of like, so what do I know? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor, but I have common sense. I think it gives you an additional level of safety, but you can ask many doctors are in favor of it. It's had a great reputation, and if it was somebody else other than me, people would say, gee, isn't that smart? A lot of people swear by it. It's gotten a bad reputation only because I'm promoting it, so I'm obviously a very bad promoter. I've taken it, I think, just about 2 weeks. I think it's another day, and I'm still here.
What do you have to lose, he asked. Well, potentially your life.
Common drug used to prevent malaria. You might have taken it before traveling overseas if you were trying not to get malaria. But most likely you never heard of this drug until last month, when primetime Fox News hosts and then the president started incessantly promoting it on a daily, sometimes hourly basis as what they were quite sure was a miracle cure for coronavirus. There's no big deal for this coronavirus thing. We've got a cure already. They promoted it despite zero clinical trials and next to no evidence of its effectiveness, but boy, were they insistent.
Vladimir Zelenko from New York announced that over 400 of his high-risk patients with the virus have recovered. All were treated with his 3-drug regimen of hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and zinc.
And all I did was deploy these 3 medications that I'm using immediately.
It's very simple. It's called politics, profit, arrogance, and fear. President Trump is in support of this treatment. It's an election year. If he's right, it's a political win. And half the country in America does not want him to be president. So they are ready to tolerate mass casualties for the purpose of gaining power themselves. That's number one. Number two, as you know, there are big pharmaceutical conflicts of interest here. Many companies invested tremendous amounts of money in advanced treatments like remdesivir or vaccines. When my treatment approach is scaled globally, that'll disrupt a multi-billion, if not trillion-dollar industry, and I'm sure they're not happy about that. Number three, there's a lot of arrogance in the medical world, and they can't believe that some Hasidic doctor in upstate New York, who's a primary care doctor, not even a researcher, came up with an approach that blows everything out of the water, where the biggest academics in the world couldn't come up with that. And number four, the fear of physicians prescribing these medications and the fear of retribution or liability from being sued because of the litigious nature of American society.
Yes, so the World Health Organization stopped the hydroxychloroquine trials based specifically on the faulty studies that were printed in The Lancet and printed in the New England Journal of Medicine. Also, the European Union stopped it, and it was headlines all across the world that we should stop using it. I do want to clarify for the audience that they did restart the trials once The Lancet and New England Journal of Medicine retracted those faulty studies. However, it's not so easy to just, restart a trial, right? You have all these patients, they were in the trial, it had to stop and start and gather new patients. And the damage has certainly been done. And in addition to those studies, there's been so much negative press about hydroxychloroquine that it's actually difficult to even enroll patients in hydroxychloroquine studies. That's been well documented. There's a professor at Columbia who said, it's hard for me to even get patients in the study because they hear about hydroxychloroquine and they think it's so negative. And I always want to remind people, this is an FDA-approved drug for 65 years. It's generic, it's cheap, it's widely available. We give it to pregnant women, we give it to breastfeeding women, we give it to elderly patients, we give it to patients who are immune compromised. Most of those patients are on it for decades. There was never controversy about hydroxychloroquine right up until March 20th, 2020. So I would look at the studies before then. You know, the early studies before Trump said he kind of liked the drug were uncontroversial. From China and from France, it looked promising. I don't know what the final data will show. However, I do find that the data after Trump thought it was possibly helpful is suspect.
In your opinion, why do you think hydroxychloroquine has become so politicized after hearing all this and seeing how the media has been kind of portraying it?
Well, you know, I think one of the serious casualties of the COVID pandemic has been scientific truth. We rely on the scientific process to be pure and untainted by political influence. The fact that, as Dr. Gold said, two of the world's most prestigious journals, Lancet and the New England Journal of Medicine, published studies hastily, without adequate peer review, and studies that were based on data that had not, where there was no transparency, that creates widespread skepticism about the reliability of medical journals to give information that can be trusted. And we're going to need to look into that whole process and to reform the process of publication so that we never see that kind of violation of scientific truth. Now, why did this become politicized? You know, the fact is that President Trump first mentioned hydroxychloroquine and advocated for its use as a non-physician in mid-March. But we had data from China and from France well before that, in February, showing a significant beneficial impact of hydroxychloroquine. Yet, you saw physicians, politicians, journalists saying that hydroxychloroquine is all hype and it's all due to the president pushing it. And that's revisionist history. The fact is there was a great deal of excitement in the medical community internationally a month before President Trump ever mentioned it because of the data reported from China and from Dr. Raoult in France. And it's sad that people used whatever political animosity they had towards the president to attack a medication that in fact had helped many people with coronavirus and could have helped many more had its reputation not been so sullied by political accusations and by poorly designed studies and by medical journals allowing publications that were negative as far as their conclusions, publications that never should have reached print because they hadn't been adequately vetted. As Dr. Gold mentioned, hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine have been around since the 1950s. Azithromycin, which is an adjuvant agent used with hydroxychloroquine, has been around for 30 years. These agents have been shown to be safe and to be effective. And again, you needed to understand which context it worked in. It wasn't going to work in the critically ill, hospitalized patients on ventilators with multi-organ system failure. That was not what it should have been used for. It works in early stage where the antiviral effect can terminate the infection and prevent people from getting critically ill. And it's sad that many people to this day have been deprived of the potentially beneficial use of an agent that in fact is safe and that is inexpensive and that's widely available.
Definitely. Dr. Gold, what is your message to the media?
My message to the media is, I understand that you have a point of view, and God bless you, and you can say it. Free speech is very important. But don't have an opinion on the science of a medication. Think of your own family and your own loved ones, and relegate to the scientists the purity of the scientific result. Because one day you could suffer the harm of having polluted that process. My message to the scientists is, I understand that there's a lot of pressure out there, maybe from big pharmaceutical companies or journal editors, to come to a specific result. I implore scientists to stand the line. If us scientists don't stand the line and hold for truth and accuracy, nobody will, certainly not the media, certainly not politicians. I'm very distressed on two levels about the JAMA study. The first level is that the scientists who ran that actual study, it doesn't seem as though it was done in the correct scientific manner. The other part I'm upset about is the journal itself, which I don't think vetted it in the manner that a world-class medical journal is supposed to vet it. So my message to the scientists and the editors is, please ignore the media and please ignore the politicians. Please focus on the science. All of humanity depends upon you doing that.
You